All right, guys, this is part two interview with Austin Howell. I had to cancel, or not cancel, but cut our other one. It was short, about 44 minutes. Originally, it was only supposed to be about 40, 45 minutes, but Austin and I went down this rabbit hole where he's talking pretty much between fake news, him being there. I think this the next couple minutes, or next, Austin, we can talk about this for hours, to be honest, because I would like to, but if you want to transition more into stateside and medical training in the States. And I know you were saying earlier what your mission is. In some of these courses, some of these guys who are talking a lot of smack, and I'll just say straight up, James Price. let's dive into that a little bit.
So, context on James Price. Well, first and foremost, with anything, the shooting community, the medical community, you name it, you should always vet your instructor. And there's dudes that have never been in gunfights before trying to take people's money to teach them how to gunfight. And the same thing with the medical community. There's guys that have never stopped an arterial bleed trying to tell you the best method for stopping an arterial bleed. So it's always, I tell everyone, vet your instructors. This whole I'm Special Forces or I have a YouTube channel is not enough. It is not, proof of anything. Anybody saying I'm Special Forces and trying to cash that to the bank is, they're wasting your time. If that's all they have, they're a one-show pony. I was a Special Forces medic, or I was this, or I was that. That is not anything. That's not proof of anything. There are plenty of dudes out there that spend their career, and this isn't to bash them, and this isn't to be condescending or anything, but there's a lot of guys out there that, they'll try to ride, I was a ranger to the bank. They'll open up their own, shooting academy, whatever, even though they've never, fired a rifle in combat. And that's, it's a big deal. And part of that problem comes like a lot of the fakes. There's a lot of fakes out there. You don't have to look too far to find, X shooting instructor, turns out they were stolen valor, And, one of those is James Price, absolutely. And not necessarily a stolen valor thing, even though, he's a liar. And basically, so I started talking to James like my first week, and I was in Kurdistan. I wasn't even technically in Iraq yet, or however you want to look at that political mess.
I like how I've talked to a bunch of people, and it's always that. And then once again, going back to a liberal arts college, I've said Kurdistan in classes before, and people were like, that country doesn't exist. And I'm like, all right, well, you go over
Iraqi Kurdistan. I was in Erbil, so you could say that. And, flying over there, like you said, the whole thing about understanding the difference between GRM and AEM, I didn't really understand it. And, it kind of seemed like a mess and everything because everybody had their own ideas. So I was like, well, maybe I should look for a plan B just in case, because I just spent all this money on a plane ticket and everything, just in case if this doesn't work out. And so I reached out to James. I looked at his stuff and I was like, oh, cool. He's like, there was a picture of them. They're like, we're clearing ISIS tunnels. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I'd much rather be doing that, than sitting in Kurdistan. Because for like my first week in Kurdistan, I didn't do anything. And, it's the same thing as being like, a boot in the military. You're like, I want to go, gunfights, all gunfights. I don't want to do Firewatch. I don't want to do Road Guard. But you come to learn that you have to do all that. It's not all sexy, gunfights and everything like that. So for my first couple of weeks in, Kurdistan, I was doing resupply missions for a Canadian NGO. We were taking supplies to them, and they were also just sitting there doing Road Guard, no patience, nothing like that. But, I was kind of like, oh, man, maybe this isn't what I thought it would be. And so I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, man, I was wondering, what you're doing and, if you guys need help or any volunteers or anything like that. And he's like, just the way he responded seemed very like secret squirrel, I'm a cool guy type thing. He was like, yeah, I'd like to respond to you, but, we're running, missions in Mosul right now. I'm like, oh, that's where I'm trying to go, like I really, I flew out here to be part of the Mosul op and I'm in Kurdistan, and like this is, and he's like, oh yeah, we're running all these, we have an operation coming up and like all this and that. I'm like, okay. And then he just like stopped responding to me. Well, a couple days passed by and finally, I'm going to the front line. February 19th, which happens to be my birthday, is the day the offensive kicked off for West Mosul. And, we were right there on the front. There's a video of us listening to some crappy hip-hop music in our truck driving with all the ambulances straight into like a massive mess of gunfire, and it was like the most beautiful thing ever. I'm like, oh, I'm all excited and everything. And then after I started to learn the in and outs of how difficult it is as an American to get into Mosul, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Well, how is this guy driving back and forth from Kurdistan to Mosul with weapons? And I'm like, it's not that easy. I promise you. Anybody who claims that they went over as an American and fought in Mosul is full of shit.
Well, I always ask, because I know a couple guys in that community, is what contacts do you have? And you can, if they can, not that I know any of them or anything, but I do know that you need to have contacts to do this. And I've gotten two answers before where, we just rolled right up. And I'm like, no.
Yep.
If you rolled right up, you're dead.
Now, so I will say this, being an American driving through like Kurdish and Iraqi checkpoints, they love us. They would, they'd let us, they would see us in our body armor and our white trucks, and they would see that, those are Americans. They would wave us around all the other vehicles. They'd talk to us for a second or whatever. But I can promise you, if you try to go through one of those checkpoints with a weapon, and there was an instance, or I won't name any names, but there was an NGO that was rolling around in a van, and they decided to grow out their beards. And for anybody that doesn't know, the way to tell, because the Iraqis have very loose, uniform policy, so they wear a lot of different types of camouflage and stuff.
Yeah.
So the way to tell the bad guy from the hodgepodge of militias and everything else was ISIS grew out long, shitty beards, and they refused to shave them. So that's how you would kind of tell, is if they had a long, shitty beard and they were carrying a weapon, they were ISIS. And that's, 100% factual, and it was very effective. Well, there was a group that was out there, and they had long, shitty beards and shitty AKs, and they got snatched up at a checkpoint and taken and interrogated. And it's a big deal. It's not an easy thing to do. So I started to get suspicious. I'm like, this guy, how is he able to do this? And then I started catching on that he's not doing this. He's never stepped foot in Mosul, or if he did, it was pre-ISIS. So I started asking him a few more questions, and I kind of ran it up our group. Because, again, Pete with GRM's been there far longer than I was, and I'd start to, ask him questions, and have you heard of this guy? Like, no, and we started looking into it. Surely somebody who had this kind of authority would be well-known amongst our groups, because it was a nightmare. Our group, had been proven with the Kurdish Peshmerga and taken on by, ISAF forces. They were pretty well known and pretty well respected. So for somebody to be able to just do this willy-nilly with weapons and go back and forth and run all these ops, surely they would have to be very well known. And so I started playing dumb at this point, because now I actually knew the in and outs of going around. So I started playing dumb. I'm like, hey man, when's the next time we're going to be through Mosul? Oh, we're going to be running an operation there next week. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'll give you our grid coordinates to our TSP. Come by. We'll have some chai. Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it next week. Next week would come around, something came up. We did another operation. Like, oh, okay. And then so I started getting a little more aggressive with my, obviously, you're full of shit, dude. So I'm like, so, hey, how are you able to go through all these checkpoints with, a PKM or an AK like you're showing in your pictures? And he's like, oh, well, we're here on behalf of the Kurdish government. And I'm like, well, the Kurdistan don't have checkpoints in Mosul. And those are the Arabs. And so if you were here on Kurdish orders, they wouldn't let you through. In fact, most of them hate the Kurds. So they're definitely not going to let you through. Yeah. And I'm like, so how's that working out for you? And he's like, we go there all the time. And I'm like, well, why don't you swing by our group? And, it was always like this or that. So then we started playing, more. I was like, why don't we offer them and pretend like we're going to hire them for security? Because that's his thing. They claim to be humanitarian aid security group.
Yeah.
Which isn't a thing. That's not a thing, by the way.
Well, if you're going to be in humanitarian aid, and you'll be acknowledged by, WHO and whatnot, you can't have security. You have to go outside that group, or outside and do it on your own, I believe, if I'm correct, right? It has to be done, you can't have guns and whatnot if you are a part of WHO. That is a big deal, I understand that.
Well, and one of the things too is, and again, it's a gray area, so you're not going to get a straight answer on this. I can tell you that it's really difficult. Yeah. And one of the things is, if you get funding, you can't wear camouflage. That's a real rule. You can't put camouflage on. So it's it's weird stuff like that. So then we're like, oh, we'll hire you for security. Come to our group. And it's like, oh no, I'm not going. I'll think about it. I'll consider it. We're doing this op. And then I started going through the pictures, and so it turns out. So this is the most beautiful part. If anybody takes away anything of why the dude's full of shit and how I can confirm it, this is the part. So all the pictures and stuff that he uploads of him like clearing active ISIS tunnels and doing all this, they were from Nineveh. And for anybody who doesn't know about the area, Nineveh was like a Christian village, and it was right outside Kurdistan. So it was like the very first place you pass through on the long, long journey to Mosul. Like it's like a 3-hour drive from Erbil, Kurdistan, maybe a 4-hour drive to Mosul. And the first place you pass through is Nineveh, and it's like there's the Nineveh Protection Unit or whatever. It's a bunch of Christian guys. It's a militia, and they own this town. This place has been liberated for a year at the point that James Price is there pretending to do security and fight ISIS. So it's been cleared for this entire time. So after I realized where the places were, I'm like, holy shit, you're sitting in Nineveh claiming to clear ISIS out of tunnels and stuff. And if you notice, one of the pictures, them in a tunnel, and they're like, we're actively clearing an ISIS tunnel, but somebody's taking a picture of him from the front. So if you're clearing an active tunnel, why would you send the camera guy in forward or in front of you while he's walking backwards? Dude, and also, all of those things had been cleared for a year. There hadn't been a shot fired in Nineveh for about a year. And if there was, it was a celebratory shot by the militias because they all do that. So, and then the most beautiful thing happened. We found a Nineveh, one of the MPU militia guys that spoke perfect English. And we sat down and we had chai with him and we asked him about him. And he's like, oh, yeah, we showed him the pictures and everything. He went through with his group and they asked if they could take some pictures with their guns. So all of those guns in those pictures are the MPU guns. They were literally MPU guys, and they asked them if they could basically do a photo shoot with their guns. And they did like this photo shoot with the MPU guys' guns, and then they would go back to Erbil or wherever, and then they would sleep. And the part that makes this, so there's a lot of groups that claim that they went and fought ISIS. It's like, it's easy to vet. Anybody that speaks English and claims to go over, they're pretty easy to vet. The thing about James specifically and his little group is they were collecting people's money to do this. They were literally getting money to be over there and do photo shoots with militia guys' guns and claim that they were hunting ISIS. And what's even bigger is now it's an international crime, because now you're talking about a humanitarian aid. He's a dentist who was supposed to go there and help people with their teeth. Now you're talking about a dentist collecting people's money, and if what he was saying was true, to fight proxy wars. He was over there collecting people's money as a humanitarian aid worker and then buying guns and fighting proxy wars, which is completely...
He just came back up. Like, that's all coming down the pipe now, because I know recently what's his school called? Or his company called or whatever? They're all coming, like, down the pipe, and, like, he had a bunch of shit that went down recently, if I'm not wrong.
So I'm on the inner circle of that. So it's the HACCP, Humanitarian Aid...
Yeah, that's what it is, HACCP, yeah.
So HACCP, and so first off, I'm going to disassociate James's name with the HACCP guys out of respect to them, because I talked to a lot of them, and I found a lot of dirt on James through that group. And what's funny is when I first found this guy, I didn't know that I guess he was like a big deal. He was like in some magazines and stuff, and he was kind of known in the contracting world or whatever. And my buddy Chris, who's like, his word is gold. Like, he could, tell me that the sky's purple, and I'm like, this guy's a very knowledgeable dude. He told me, he's like, no, he's like a real deal on the contracting thing, but it's interesting to see that, he's full of shit, and I can kind of see that. So I didn't know that he was a person that, like, if I called him out on his nonsense, that, like, the media would react and defend him. But I came to find this out. Jim Fuller, Rifle Dynamics, posted a thing, him trying to raise money. And I reached out to Jim, and I'm like, hey, Jim, just so you know, this dude's totally full of shit. He's collecting people's money. He's not doing anything. He's just sitting over there taking pictures with guns. He's seriously not doing anything. And Jim was like, no, he's like, this guy's good to go. He's been vetted. And I was like, I felt like, obviously I'm not going to argue with Jim. Jim's a good dude. I'm not going to be like, no, you're wrong. This guy's, full of it, And I was just kind of like, oh, man, that kind of sucks. Nobody's going to, believe what I know because, this guy's got a following. But then it started to trickle down that other people were like, I went to one of his classes, which, by the way, he has no teaching certs whatsoever. It's not legally required, but, like, he doesn't even have, like, the most basic, like, NRA cert. He has 0 certs to be teaching people. So his classes, basically, from what I learned from some of his previous students, because once I started calling him out publicly, people were like, like, they were scared, like, they knew something about him, but they were like, man, I don't want the backlash of, like, basically saying this. They started coming out to me, and they were private messaging me, like, left and right, and they were like, they were like, hey, by the way, we went to one of his courses and we knew something was up because like the guy, like his courses were very disorganized. They were crappy. Like he was telling us fake stuff or like really bad advice. And then, one of the guys that went was like, a multiple time combat vet and was like, dude, that would not work. Basic, vehicle clearing and, vehicle search procedures and stuff like that. None of that sounds like legit. And then the guy like wanted to fight him, like James like wanted to fight him and everything. And more groups started reaching out to me. And then finally the Hassif guys were like, hey, just so you know, we're not associated with him anymore. I guess there was a thing. He was like stealing money, the foundation money or the donation money, he was stealing it. And like, so the group's like, one day, like my buddy sent me a screenshot and it was James like, I have no association with them. They're nothing to me. And it's because like he got called out basically for being fake. And this all stemmed from me like calling him out a few times. People started to question him. And then it turned out that he was like totally fake. And then like an idiot, like, okay, if you're going to do something like that and you're going to try to profit off of it and then you get caught, stop. Don't continue. And then a couple days later, he posted a picture of him with like a rifle, and he's like, "This is me sniping with the YPG, back when I was fighting ISIS and like all this and that." I'm like, the dude, he's got something wrong in his head because everybody knows he's full of shit, and now he's like doubling down on it. And like I said, it's easy to vet. Any English-speaking person that goes over there is so incredibly easy to vet. Now, it's easy to go over there and sit with like the Peshmerga or the YPG or something, and sit with them like before it became a big deal to be an American over there. It would be easy to go over there and they would be like, yeah, you could sit road guard with us or whatever, and they would just let you hang out with them. But you wouldn't do anything offensive. And that's not across the board. There's one or two, Americans that went over there and they actually got to go do some cool stuff. James is not one of them. And it's easy to vet them because it's easy to, my group was very embedded with, the Peshmerga and ISOF. So I have both the Arab and, the Kurd connections to be able to reach down the pipeline and say, hey, do you know this guy? Do you know this guy? And no, he didn't do any fighting. He sat over there basically in Erbil and did some road guard and took some pictures and then tried the whole Hassif thing, took people's money and sat over there and basically did photo shoots all day. And he's a total scam. If you donated money to Hassif, maybe some of the funds through the rest of the Hassif guys went places. But like a lot of the guys that were on Hassif were like, dude, I knew something was wrong with him because we went out to the range one day and he couldn't hit a still target from 100 yards away with iron sights of an AK. And they're like, but this is the same guy that claims he's like a sniper and everything. Like all these guys are like starting to come out and they're like, dude, something's totally off with his stories. And then he just like disappeared and then he started posting pictures again and then he disappeared again. And it's like, he blocked me after I called him out and I like tagged him in a post and everything. But yeah, no, 100% he's fake, like absolutely fake. He may have had like, and which is sad because he may have been like, legit in the contracting days or, whatever. He may have done some good stuff. And it's sad that he kind of like threw dirt on that by trying to, claim to be something he's not. If he went over there and he was a dentist and he was helping, the displaced people or whatever, that's nothing to scoff at. That's honorable. That's incredibly cool. Don't then take that and then try to like turn it into you are some super secret ISIS fighting badass. Like that's now all of the good work he may have done. He may have like, treated some kid's teeth over there from drinking too much chai, and nobody's going to look at that because he's just full of shit and claiming he was like killing ISIS with a sniper and stuff.
It's always that saying that one fuck up erases 1,000 attaboys. In this case, it's a lot of fuck ups. Don't get me wrong. And and I think you touched on it great and you'll see this with active duty service members, contractors, whatever in this, I guess this, I hate to sound like fucking BuzzFeed right now, but this masculine profession of fucking warrior culture that we're fucking in, and that everyone wants to fucking sandbag their stories,
Oh yeah, like, absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's why I really want to do like my medical mythbuster thing, and like that's two things. Like I said, if you know my name, you either love me or hate me. And if you hate me, you think I'm a total asshole, and it's because I have no problem calling people out on their bullshit. And whether that's on the veteran side from people that are like, oh, yeah, I was in so many gunfights. Fun tidbit about vets, if you find the vet that's been in a really good gunfight, he's not going to preach about wanting to gunfight because it's the most terrifying thing ever. And it's not something that, anybody wants to relive multiple times. And that's not to say that there's not guys that have been in lots of gunfights that are willing to gunfight again. But you're not going to find the guys that like think it's this like glorified, beautiful thing. It's terrifying. And, it's one of those things to where a lot of guys, they get on there and they're like, I was in 107 gunfights and I saved a guy with his bootlaces. And it's like, no, you didn't. Every time I see one of those conversations, if you see me respond, it slowly turns into that scene from Billy Madison where they're getting on the school bus and he's like, that Veronica Vaughn. And it's like, no, he didn't. Yeah. And he's like, well, maybe not me personally. And it's like, that's exactly how all of those conversations, turn into. And I
hate that, man. I hate because some douchebag's gonna see that, like, the shoestring, and they're gonna be like, yo, man, like, this is a good idea. Maybe, fucking James Price, this guy I met on Facebook, or he went to freaking Afghanistan or in Iraq and did all this cool shit, and he uses a shoestring to freaking save motherfuckers' lives. And now, like, the EMT in Chicago, for some reason, it's like, don't worry, guys, I got this. Playing softball, playing softball or doing something, it's like, I got this. And I'm like, dude, I have a perfectly good tourniquet here. He's like, no, we can use this shoestring. I saw it from James Price. And I'm like, who the fuck is James Price?
And you can change shoestring with rat tourniquet. And it's like, that's sad because, like, John Lavelle, like, nothing against him, but it's like, he's a prime example of today. He uploaded that video of the rat tourniquet, and it's like that's somebody using their platform of like a following to recommend something that's totally shit. And a lot of people, if you like look at the comments, it's like, I just order mine, thanks, and it's like, oh man, like now you could directly see the effects of recommending such a a shitty piece of gear from somebody who used their platform, as a preaching stance. And now all these people are buying rat tourniquets, and it's like rat tourniquets are totally garbage. And it's like there's not too many medics worth their weight that are like, hey, I totally recommend the rat tourniquet. Most cases, when you see the rat tourniquet mentioned, it turns into a shitstorm. And if it was a good piece of gear, its reputation would speak for itself, and it wouldn't have to turn into a shitstorm. And you wouldn't have to read all the obviously bullshit stories that people who are defending the rat tourniquets are making up of the time they improvise a tourniquet with a broomstick and electrical cable. Yeah. Like, it's so insane how that happens. And that happens with the shooting community, the medical community, you name it.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit on our last podcast, was the fucking fake improvised shit, the tampons,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you take apart a tampon and you're like, bro, that barely stops fucking vagina bleeds, which is fucking true. But for some reason, it's been manifested into the end-all, be-all. So when you can have another freaking hemostatic agent in your IFAC and said you got a fucking tampon, and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do with this, bro? You fucking you're fucking squirting out blood, man. Like, straight
well,
out
like you said earlier, all these stories stem from one true story usually. And, like, whenever I bash the rat, it's not me saying it's completely impossible to stop a bleed with a rat. But the way the rat was advertised, it doesn't fulfill its role. It's not rapid. It's not easy to use. Look at all these guys doing the Doppler videos, and it's not working. Either all of these people can't figure out a bungee cord and how to stop a bleed with it, and so therefore your whole theory of it being rapid and easy to use is completely false, or, your tourniquet just doesn't work. At one point in time, you have to accept one or the other. And again, that's not to say that it would never work. It's just the cat's far better. The cat's worked. It's proven. It's combat proven, and then you're going to take something that people are testing and proving to be like this crappy piece of equipment, and you're going to ignore it and say, well, the guy who created it was a Green Beret. And then people, they go all fanboy and they're like, Green Beret? You can't question a Green Beret. And then it's like, now all these guys are running around with bungee cords strapped to their jeans. And it's like, this cannot.
I like how you said it's not rapid, because I don't fucking find it rapid at all. Because maybe this is me a little biased being from the military, being from the Marine Corps. It's they train us with cats. Yeah. I can put on a cat, and you just let your arm go dead or your leg go dead, and you just put it on. Simulate whatever wound you have. Putting it on myself is easy. Putting it on someone else is 10 times easier. I look at the rat. I've tried to put it on once, and I'm looking like I have cerebral palsy trying to tighten this thing down.
Well, and there's a lot of like myths behind it. Like they say that you can't treat children. We've treated plenty of children with the cats. Most of the people coming out of Mosul were starving. So even the adults were like, looked like, we just took them out of Auschwitz. They were starving. They were literally starving, and cat tourniquets worked fine on them. So that's the other thing, is that it doesn't work on small limb people. We've stopped plenty of bleeds on small limb people. And if they're too small for the cat, then chances are you could just wrap your hand around them and stop the bleeding with your hand and take them to the surgical center, and it's nonsense. None of the arguments are anywhere near good in favor of it. And that all stems back to, the guys that are advertising it on Facebook usually follow it up with a bullshit story of the time they saved somebody's life with an improvised tourniquet. It's all bullshit. If you have to lie to advertise something, then you might want to reconsider your stance, because you're pushing a product that is nonsense with a nonsense story to promote it. So at some point in time, you have to sit back and say, I've never actually stopped an arterial bleed. Maybe I should shut the fuck up about what kind of tourniquets people should carry.
Not only that, also there's so much stopping the bleed in itself. Like, there's so much you can do with the tourniquet on that, like, because a lot of these guys are probably having one or two people at the most hurt. They're not dealing it in a mass casualty. I would wager 90% of the time those advocating the rat tourniquets and whatnot. So I'm like, you're telling me that you have an arterial bleed and you can't rip homie's shirt off, start applying direct pressure with a cat tourniquet, doing everything you can, to prevent shock and such. I was like, it seems like a lot of people are coming, and I use the word controlled very loosely because of where you're coming from. A gunshot wound in the middle of freaking LA isn't that crazy compared to, okay, the U.S. allegedly dropped this 200 KIA bomb. We should have all the casualties coming. I can imagine that's when you're like, all right, let's, start dealing with this, because we're about to have 50 to 100 to even God knows how many people coming.
Well, I mean, and so context, again, is important with, like, my scenario. I didn't go to Iraq as a hot shit medic. I'm still not a hot shit medic. I have a lot of experience, but I don't have a lot of knowledge. Everything I learned on the fly. I learned to improvise a lot. There's this picture we have of we finally got oxygen. Most of the time we didn't even have oxygen to give our patients. We finally got an ambulance. Well, we finally got an ambulance full of oxygen, and it exploded. Like, literally, the whole ambulance went up in flames, and there's a picture of it, and it's like, that was all of our oxygen, which we didn't have for the longest time. So half the time we didn't even have oxygen. So, like, a lot of the stuff we did, we reached a point to where we used all of our cat tourniquets. We went through all of our cat tourniquets, and we were buying fabric to cut into improvised tourniquets. And luckily, North American Rescue came through and hooked us up, and we got a bunch of cat tourniquets at the time when we really needed them. By the way, I don't get paid anything. Every time I recommend North American Rescue or, like, suggest them, people are like, oh, yeah, you're biased. They're like, yeah, because they saved a lot of lives in Mosul with their equipment that they sent to us. They absolutely are high priority in my book. I don't get paid a dime. We paid for the materials that we got from North American Rescue. They didn't give us anything for free. But it's one of those things to where, I learned to improvise. So I'm not like this. I want to learn. I'm getting ready to take another T.C.C. course in April, and I want to continue to learn. I don't know a lot about medical. I have a lot of hands-on, and the stuff that I do know, I know from improvising and having to improvise. So when I hear this story about somebody allegedly improvising, I've been in this scenarios where I didn't have the tools that you would want to have in these scenarios, and I had to find my way around it. So I know what improvising looks and feels like. So when I hear somebody claim they improvise with a broomstick and an electrical cable, I'm like, that's pretty intricate. Why wouldn't you just kneel on the pressure point? And like, so all these guys that are telling these stories to promote, somebody claimed they got 2 saves in the U.S. and 2 saves elsewhere with a rat tourniquet, and it's like, using tourniquets in the U.S. is a pretty big deal. Like, using them in Iraq, it's like, or in a war zone, it's hard to vet because it happens a lot, whatever. In the U.S., stopping traumatic bleeds as a civilian or as EMS with a non-T.C.C. approved tourniquet, you're full of it. You didn't carry a rat tourniquet on your ambulance and start saving lives with it. It didn't happen. And for people to get on there and try to use their background and stuff to promote these things, it's like, that's why, I am like I am, because a lot of people are like, I get a lot of guys messaging me and they're like, dude, I love the way you troll and all this and that. And it's like, no, it's not a troll. Like, it's legit. You got people spreading bad information on groups where people are there specifically to learn. And these people are absorbing it like sponges because these guys have a background as, say, being a paramedic or, combat medic or something. And now they say something and all these people eat it up and then they start regurgitating it. Next thing you know, you still have bad information. If you don't stop it at the root, and somebody needs to start stopping it at the root, it's going to spread. And next thing you know, you go on a deployment like I did and everybody's got tampons in their IFAKs. That's exactly how it happens.
Yeah. It's disappointing because it will get someone killed, and like there is truth to it. A rat tourniquet probably has saved someone's life, but how many people has it killed? Straight up. And you got to put it up into its little like damn whirlwind of, it's like a big circle. I'm like, man, I can stick a freaking a cat tourniquet in my boot if I got boots, like, cowboy boots on, or in my back pocket, like
511 blue jeans, the offset pockets in the back hold a cat Gen 7 perfectly, a pack of Quick Clot, some gloves. You can carry all that without looking like a total nerd.
Yeah.
They look like regular blue jeans. I wear those every time I go out, and I always have my cat Gen 7, and they sit off center, so you're not sitting on a tourniquet every time you sit down. They literally sit away from your butt cheeks, and they're perfect for carrying. So, if you giving this excuse that it's better than nothing or that it's easier to carry, bullshit. You're just not planning properly. You're just trying. You're lazy. That's lazy thinking. That's what it is. If you're a concerned citizen, if you carry a gun, if you spent more than X amount of money on your gun, I bet your holster, you have a very nice, amazing holster. I bet you had a lot of work done to your pistol, but you're going to tell me you would rather carry a bungee cord on you because some medic somewhere that's never had blood on his gloves is telling you that it's an okay, tourniquet. It's like, no, that's absolutely, I have no problem calling bullshit on that. And if that makes me an asshole, because at the end of the day, my goal is to train people. And if that comes down to me being wrong and the rat turns out to be like I'm completely wrong and people are like, and they want to use me as an example to train people, guess what? I'm totally okay with that because it's a win-win situation for me because now I just trained a bunch of people that, hey, this is a good tourniquet. But it's not. Well, spoiler alert, it's not. But if it turned out to be the case, I'd be totally happy and let it happen, Internet shame me, whatever, your Special Forces Delta Recon Navy SEAL door gunner cousin that saved 100 lives on the U.S. with a rat tourniquet suddenly has proof, and you show it, and I look like a complete idiot. So be it. I'll admit it, and guess what? The next thing I'll be doing a couple days later, without shame, I'll be recommending that tourniquet to people because I know now that it saves lives. But until then, no, it's absolutely not. And there's a reason it's not TCCC certified, and there's a reason why all these medics that do Doppler tests with them can't get it to stop their pulse. And, there's all these reasons and factors behind it that it's not just one person stood up one day and said, this tourniquet's orange, it's not a cat tourniquet, therefore it sucks. No, there's a lot of testing and stuff that went behind this to determine that it's not a good tourniquet.
Now, Austin, we got about 10 minutes left. On this show, but so what's next for you, and then what's next for men like you going to Iraq as volunteers in the medical side, not as YPG road guards and whatnot?
Well, for me specifically, like I told you, my plan is to, one, dispel a lot of these myths, the improvised tourniquets, all this and that. I want to start a podcast. I want to learn more. I'm in a lot of these medical groups to learn. Yeah. And I enjoy seeing the guys that actually have their stuff together. Next Generation Combat Medic, that's a great page. I love going on there and reading their articles, stuff like that. I love these groups that, so one of them's to learn, to grow, because I have a lot of experience, but not necessarily a lot of knowledge. And I would like to be able to have a lot of knowledge, and I would like to get instructor certified. So that's one of my plans. And the other plan is to be able to maybe start a nonprofit and start teaching people this stuff for free. I would like to absolutely be able to do it, not make a dime, maybe cover my travel fees or whatever, and get groups of people together and teach them. Right now, all my buddies are like, hey, I'd like to learn this. I'm like, hey, pick a day, come over and I'll teach you, But I would like to evolve it into I can teach you and then give you a certificate or something, or we can all show up and rent out this place and I'd be able to teach all of you and I won't take any of your money and, you'll never have to worry. Even still now, to anybody who listens to this, and this is 100%, anybody can confirm or deny this. They can go ahead and test this theory. You reach out to me and you're like, I'd like to learn something. I'd love to teach you for free. I won't charge you a dime. Just find a day that I'm free or whatever. If you live too far, get on Skype. We could talk on Skype. I could just teach you whatever. I love to talk medicine. And again, just keep in mind that I'm not the most knowledgeable. I just have a lot of experience. So if you ask, how does this work, or what's it like using a tourniquet? Is it really as obvious to tell when there's an arterial bleed or whatever? Ask away. I have no problem talking it. I'm not going to belittle you. If you come at me with an open mind and you're like, I would like to learn, that's one thing. If you come at me with a nuh-uh, you're wrong attitude, I have no problem going at it with you. It's, I'll pass my time one way or another. It's entertaining and it makes great content for my Facebook. As you've seen, I have no problem shaming the guys that, get on there and they make stuff up and they try to preach their nonsense on these pages. I have no problem going against that.
That's fucking awesome, man. So, Valhalla Group, if you want to reach up with Austin, get up with us. I was going to tag you on a Facebook post, but I feel like you'll get fanboyed way too much because I fanboy you a decent amount. But I'll definitely put your YouTube page up, and like you said, it's all free, doesn't monetize it. So you think about going back, man? Or is there any, could you have as much of an impact going back? And what do you foresee in the next couple months, with the ISIS threat in especially Mosul and just Iraq in general, just seemingly on the decline?
For me, I'd much rather, just spread the word. I don't think I would go back. It's like one of those things, you get out, especially being a veteran, you get out and you're like, oh, I'm done, and then you're like, you can't wait to get out of the military. And then once you get out of the military, you never shut up about being in the military.
Yeah.
And it's your glory days. That's exactly how I ended up on a plane back to Iraq. It's the same thing. So I'd like to say, I'm done. I'd like to, just like raise a family, have a normal life. But I think I'll continue to make an impact by spreading the message, the reality. I want to set up an interview with some of the people that lived under ISIS control and, get their word out and, do some talks with them and spread the message of what really happened. There were people exposed to chemical weapons. There were children shot in the face by snipers, and it's stuff that, people may not necessarily want to hear about, but I think it's important to get that story out and to get into, the reality of this, and then also start to like improve teaching for, medicine. That's absolutely my goal. But no, long story short, no, I don't think I'll be going back or doing anything crazy. I think my exciting days are done. Those are going to be my glory days. That's going to be it.
Well, I know this is a little bit overdone, this statement, but in with the bottom of my heart, and I'll speak on behalf of this group, thank you for your service, not only as a Marine, but it took real balls to go over there as a volunteer in Iraq. I think a lot of guys, want to fucking talk a good game and all that shit, but you literally went over there as a volunteer, and a lot of guys in this group have done a lot of awesome stuff, but in the end, we all get paid to go over there, so it definitely says a lot about your character, and definitely makes you a little bit crazy, man, because I think we're all a little crazy just for going over, and then you're going over as a volunteer, man, but fucking awesome, dude. I really appreciate talking with you, man. I think everyone in this group, if they listen to this and whatnot, both parts of it, really take what he said, man, and really absorb it, because we could probably go for hours upon hours of just bullshitting about this stuff, and I've learned so much from you, from just talking to you off air to even this podcast, just shooting the shit. And not only that, everyone wants to be a shooter as well, but it's the medics that really make, are out there saving lives and stuff like that. So it's really awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on this podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad I appreciate that you're going to get this story out there. And yeah. I think it's something that, I'm always willing to talk about. I'd like to, help get it out there for people. I'd teach a lot of people.
Yeah. I'd love to have all you GRM guys just fucking, maybe not on my podcast because I'm not that big, but anyone, man, just to fucking, like, I don't think people realize how much knowledge y'all have, not just in, like, tactical medicine and whatnot, but, like, y'all, you can disprove the 200 fucking kids killed or civilians killed by fucking Time magazine. Like, obviously, I think a lot of people distrust the media to begin with now in America, especially the last 5-10 years. But it's just so much nonsense, and y'all have such such experiences and such good knowledge on not only a professional side but just like the journalism side, that you can be like, yo, I was fucking there, that's not what happened, go fuck yourself, stop making X seem bad, or I was there, go fuck yourself, stop making Y look good. And it's just I just hope y'all, I hope all y'all, man, because your group's gotten a decent amount of press, but it's unfortunate that it's been kind of censored. So I'd like to, fucking hopefully a couple of you guys write books, man.
Yeah, and we've spitballed the idea, buddy John and I.
That's, yeah, this gentleman in his videos with the hand tattoos, I believe, correct?
Yeah. And he taught me a lot over there. He had far more experience than me. I learned a lot from him. And, we talked about, spitballing and, reminiscing, or talking about for, guys that want to get into becoming volunteers or getting into medics, what it's like, the routes to go through, or which routes to take if you want to have like a medical career. And we talked about, getting together for a podcast and, getting that out there. So there's definitely, it's a chance.
Man. You'll have one listener, man. I'll be on that because I listen to Tim Kennedy's podcast a decent amount, and he's got the doc on there. And any little bit of tactical medicine and whatnot is always just so useful, especially when it's not just for going to Iraq and Afghanistan. You can be in Vegas, fucking at a concert, and then someone decides, you know what, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna fucking shoot 50 fucking people or 200 people. It's disgusting. And then I've put on this, and now, I'm going to have to wrap this up, but if even one of those people knew how to fucking control a bleed, or whatever, or how many more people would have survived that shooting? If maybe one had a cat tourniquet on them, if one just put some pressure, if one did this, if one did that, if they even put them in a recovery position, so now they're freaking not, gurgling on their fucking blood, and then, fucking their whole, not, as they wait for a suction and shit like that. Just little shit like that, man. People fucking should know. It's unfortunate, but they should fucking know.
Right.
All right, y'all. That was Mr. Austin Howell. I'm going to put these up. You'll probably get it by the middle of the week. Today's Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, I'm not fucking watching it because I just don't care anymore. But, yeah, guys, I really appreciate it. Austin, thank you so much. And y'all, we'll catch you in later this week, guys. Thanks, man.
Yep, thanks for having me.